Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be discussing the IELTS speaking section as well as the three different parts that the speaking section includes. So if you'd like to learn more about these three different parts as well as hear some sample questions and answers, then keep watching as I will discuss these questions and answers with you and give you some of my tips that I have for you and how you could best answer the questions. Just a little bit about myself. I am a certified English teacher in Canada, and I have been coaching students in the IELTS exam for the past 6 years. I decided to start this YouTube channel just to help you guys out in your IELTS exam. So I'm hoping you find these videos useful. If you'd like to see more of my content, then make sure you check out my website at eslwords.com, where I've written lots of articles that provide you with strategies to help you with your IELTS exam. In another video I've linked down below in the description box, I explain different strategies you should use to help you get a high band in the IELTS speaking section. So if you'd like to check out that video, make sure you check the description box down below, and let's get right into it. So part one of the IELTS speaking exam, you will be asked questions about yourself, your family size, your accommodation, whether you live in a house, an apartment, how many bedrooms you have in your house, if you're working or you're studying. So just some basic questions about you. And then right after that, I will follow part two. In part two, you will be given a cue card, so a little card of 2 or 3 questions, and these questions can relate to pretty much anything in between sports, food, shopping, family, or school. And you will have about 1 minute to prepare for your answers. So as I mentioned, if you're not sure how to prepare your answers or how you can prioritize that 1 minute of preparation, I highly recommend you check out my other video down in the description box where I guide you on how you could use that 1 minute to plan out what you are going to discuss to the examiner. So I highly recommend you to check out that video. And so you will be given 1 minute to prepare for these answers before talking, and you will be required to speak for a full 2 minutes. So you need to make sure that you speak for 2 minutes, not 1 minute and a half, not 50 seconds. You need to ensure that you have enough information to say in that full 2 minutes. And then right after that, you will jump right into part three. Part three is more of a discussion-based conversation between you and the examiner. Think of this as an informal discussion. Obviously, you want to make sure you use the right vocabulary, no slang, nothing like this. Keep it professional, but it's an informal discussion, and the examiner will ask you questions related to the same context or topic that you were discussing in part two. I will give you some examples coming up, so you will see that part two and part three are related within the same topic, and this is usually the case between part two and part three when you do your IELTS speaking exam. So before I get into the different questions and answer examples, I wanted to show you some tips that I recommend you follow to score a high band in your IELTS speaking section. It's so important that you use synonym language when you are responding to the question. So what I mean by this is, don't start your answer with the exact words in the questions. For instance, if the examiner asks you, where do you live? You don't want to say, I live in America, for example. You want to make sure you use synonym language, you reword the phrase, you reword the sentence to show the examiner that you are able to speak like an English speaker. Try to use vocabulary that's related and relevant to the topic. This is very important because these are the things the examiner is looking for to give you a high band. So this is your chance to shine, stay confident, and I highly recommend you do this. And also, you don't need to worry about your ideas. You are only being tested for your knowledge in the English language. Last but not least, you could ask for some clarification of the question, so definitely keep note of that. So here are some recent speaking part 1 questions you may get asked. I decided not to include the basic ones of what's your name or where you live. We can definitely get into that, but I thought these were more trickier to discuss. So let's look at the first one. Do you drink coffee or tea? This is a random question that you may be asked. So a way to answer this question is not by saying, yes, I drink coffee. No, that will score you a low band. Rather, you should say something like this. I used to I used to pull a lot of all-nighters in university because I had a lot of exams to take. So that's when my love for coffee grew because it helped me stay up at night. So I definitely prefer coffee over tea. So if you noticed, I did not even mention which drink I prefer over which until the end. I showed the examiner that I am able to answer this question by using synonym language and using relevant words, relevant vocabulary within the topic. So I highly recommend that you answer with something along these lines. So let's go to the next question. Do you usually serve coffee or tea to your guests? Here's a way you can answer this question. I would say something along the lines of, I usually ask my visitors which they prefer because some people only like coffee in the mornings while other people like tea during the afternoon time. So that's why I think it's important to always ask your guests which they prefer to ensure that you could serve them the correct hot drink. So the next question says, do you prefer morning or evening drinks? So this is how I would answer the question. I would say something along the lines of, I actually really love my coffee in the mornings because it helps me stay awake. However, I always appreciate my cup of tea after my kids are asleep in the evenings because it helps me wind down and relax for the rest of the night. So I definitely prefer both drinks. And let's look at the last question. Have you ever had a bad haircut? So you can say something along the lines of, experiencing a bad haircut has always been a nightmare of mine, but I don't recall getting a bad haircut anytime recently. However, I do remember getting a bad haircut at a salon when I was in high school. The stylist cut my hair too short and my hair was up to my shoulders. I hated my haircut because I wanted it to be below my shoulders. So these are all samples of the IELTS speaking part 1 questions you may get. Let's go right into the part 2 questions so you can see the difference between part 1 and part 2. So here are some part 2 type of questions you may get. So as I mentioned, you will be given these questions and then you will have 1 minute to prepare for your answers. So you need to make sure that you take that 1 minute very seriously. You need to think about how you are going to start talking to the examiner. As I mentioned, check out my other video down in the description box for ideas and strategies that I give you in my previous video of how you can respond to the part 2 questions in the IELTS speaking exam. So let's look at the first one. Describe a present or gift someone gave you that you really liked. You should say what kind of present it was, who gave it to you, why were you given it, and explain why you liked it. So the questions are on this slide, and I will give you the answers in the coming slide. So the next question is, describe your favorite teacher from school. You should say what school he or she taught at, what he or she looked like, what subject he or she taught you, and explain why you remember this teacher so well. So one tip I want to give you is to be sure that you answer every single bullet point. I know I keep saying this, but you need to make sure you watch my other video to learn about how to outline through your answers in that 1 minute that they give you to prepare for your answers. I'm very big on outlining. I'm sure you've heard that a lot throughout a lot of my videos. So I highly recommend that you learn that strategy of outlining to help you get your points across. So here is how I recommend that you answer your part 2 question. So for the first one about the present or gift, you should say something like this. On my 10th wedding anniversary, we went out for dinner. My husband surprised me with the same roses he had given me on our first date when we met. I had no idea that he actually managed to dry the roses and put them in a glass bottle and give them to me as a gift. This was probably the most sentimental gift I ever received because it was such a memorable day in my life. So as you see here, I didn't even mention gift until the second last sentence. This here would definitely help you score a band 9. So definitely keep that in mind. This will definitely help you. Let's look at the second one. Describe your favorite teacher from school. So, having guidance from particular people has shaped me into who I am today. However, one teacher who was someone I really appreciated was my 6th grade teacher at John Fleming School, Mr. Brown. He was a very slim, tall man who always walked into class with a huge smile. His humor always made going to class so fun, especially because the way he taught history was so entertaining. One thing that I will never forget is he was such a good storyteller. He always had the best stories to tell and put so much emphasis in every part, making it interesting. So as you see here, I ensured that I included every single bullet point to mention to the examiner. This is something you really need to be cognizant of when you are planning out your answers in that 1 minute. So let's look at part 3 and how the questions in part 2 could relate to part 3. It's usually within the same topic as I mentioned, so you could definitely see that. So part 3 is a question about, do you think mothers or fathers play a major role in the family? If so, how? What are the responsibilities of a father on his children? Do you think families should treat girls and boys the same or different? So as you see in the previous slide, we asked about a gift someone in your family gave you. And this part 3 is a connection of this within the same topic. So these are the type of questions you will see in part 3. So let's take a look at how I answered part 3. So the first question, you will be asked one question at a time. In part 3, it's a discussion. So he will ask you one question, you give an answer, and then he asks you another question. I definitely think when a family has a good foundation and a mother and father play their individual roles as a team, this builds a strong family. It's certainly true that children look up to both parents, so I definitely think that both roles play an important part in a healthy family. So that's the answer to number 1. Number 2, what are the responsibilities of a father on his children? As I mentioned earlier, both mother and father have roles to play toward their children. Fathers equally play the same role as the mother when it comes to caring for their children and putting them to bed. So number 3, do you think families should treat girls and boys the same way or different? There should definitely be no difference in the way boys and girls are treated in the household. In fact, girls should be taught the different things society teaches us that boys only do, and vice versa. And then you could touch up by saying, so what I mean by this is boys usually are known to change tires on cars and not girls. But girls should also be taught how to change tires. They should be not treated any different than boys. So I highly recommend that you take note of all these things that I discussed in today's video. And also, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you are notified when I release new videos every Friday. Also, as I mentioned, please check out my website at eslwords.com, where I have wrote lots of articles on the different parts of the IELTS exam.